Hello, divergent friends, and welcome to Cognitive Dissonance, the channel where we try to sort through some of the craziness surrounding us, and I've kind of got a doozy for you today. So, it seems like the one thing that everybody can agree on is that it feels like something is coming. There is a collective anticipation that feels almost palpable in the air. I mean, literally, we are living in truly unusual times. And between the errant economic policies being pushed during the health crisis by our elected officials and the unceasing efforts of the global um, unelected governing bodies of basically predator class elites and their cohorts at organizations like the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization, which never seem to stop exerting their influence on our national politics. Okay, they have created the potential for a systematic failure of both government and the economy that would literally reverberate around the globe. I mean, they said they wanted a reset, guys. They said they wanted a reset. And they have manipulated, if not outright created, the conditions with which to push their agenda. Um, Nobody wants to work, right? Nobody wants to work anymore. We've got extreme inflationary pressure. There's a housing bubble, supply chain shortages, rampant cyber attacks. They are restructuring our methods of food production and farming. I mean, these things could lead to a collapse that would effectively eliminate the middle class and wipe out any holdings that the poor may have, right? It would create a situation where the dependence on government is not only demanded by the people, right, but made necessary by the same group of people that got us into this mess to begin with, which is exactly where they want us, right? It's exactly where they want us. I mean, we look around in amazement every day at the rapid pace of change that we see around us. I mean, the world seems almost unrecognizable from what it was even 2 years ago. I mean, really, guys, were people so triggered by mean tweets that they were just willing to exchange it all for total global catastrophe? Because, man, that's what it's looking like. And let me be clear, right? I am not a nihilist. I'm not saying these things as a damn black pill because I happen to think there's still hope, right? Although the road might be tough going for a minute, but I'm a realist. And we are not going to change these things by putting our heads in the sand and ignoring the situation around us. Um, I say these things because you need to know what is happening so that we can do something about it. And we happen to find ourselves in a real sticky wicket when it comes to the current situation with China. I mean, we have seen the rhetoric get a bit amped this week. And I'm wondering, like, are we looking at serious trouble here? Are we? Our government certainly seems to think so. Um, so for the longest, the U.S. Air Force has maintained our air power in the Pacific primarily at two bases. Okay, we had Kadena Air Base in Japan, and there was Andersen Air Force Base in Guam. Now, at the time, we weren't really considering that China might become a serious threat, or at least not this soon, right? China saw this as a strategic flaw. They could easily crater these two bases with non-nuclear ballistic missiles, ruin landing strips, just take out supplies. It was a problem. Now we know that China has built up a cache of about 1,300 missiles that do have the range to hit these bases. So now, in response to this, the idea is to spread out our forces, right, across potentially dozens of smaller bases that would drastically reduce China's strike capacity. And there are nations that are eager to have our forces there, obviously. I mean, places like Palau, Micronesia, and the Marianas, they are all willing to host bases. Um, they also note that there was a gaping hole in air coverage in the Philippine Sea east of Taiwan. Obviously, China noticed this too, because we've seen the issues with China's maritime militia, which they claim are fishing boats, okay, and how they've been terrorizing Filipino fishermen and loitering in the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. Um, China has also been creating man made islands in the waters that are claimed by the Philippines and other nations in the South China Sea. And they've been converting these little islands into military bases. So for us, I mean, keeping a bunch of smaller bases and having our forces perpetually rotating seems like a pretty smart idea. Um, so that's what they're doing. They're anticipating war with China. The U.S. Air Force is fanning out across the Pacific. Good call. Good call on that. But not only are we changing where and how our forces are based in the Pacific, but we're also shifting the types of weapons that we're going to supply them with, right? So basically, now that we're moving out of the Middle East, we are definitely looking towards a Pacific theater in the event of war, right? And the Air Force budget for fiscal year 2022 has shown a dramatic shift in the type of weapon investments that we're going to be making. So instead of focusing on small diameter bombs and things like Hellfire missiles, we are moving towards more long range, state of the art hypersonic weapons, like the Arrow hypersonic weapon, and stealth cruise missiles that have a range of like 600 miles. We also happen to be buying a bunch of anti-ship missiles because, as we know now, China has officially the largest navy in the world. And we already know that would play a significant role in any potential conflict, right? So we're seeing a lot of changes with our military. Um, so why? I mean, what changed to make this happen? Several things actually. So the issue of Taiwan has been one of our preeminent concerns for quite some time. Although China claims Taiwan under the One China policy, Taiwan has effectively been operating independently from the mainland since like 1949. And the U.S. has taken kind of an odd approach. They do that whole directly indirectly thing where we support Taiwan and the democratic government there for years in practice, while we let China make its claims on paper. Okay, basically. But recently we have seen a shift. We've seen a more formal recognition of Taiwan as a de facto nation in the form of, everything from diplomatic visits from US dignitaries to weapons sales. And it's widely accepted across the world that the US would move to defend Taiwan in the event of a hostile Chinese takeover attempt. I mean, the Taiwanese government is bracing for war, and our own generals are speculating that we would probably see an amphibious assault sometime in the next few years. Um, they did an interesting piece on PBS. I don't generally support PBS, but I wanted to share this with you. They did an interesting piece on PBS NewsHour the other day, and I thought they gave a pretty good explanation. Here, listen.
Taiwan is the issue creating the most tension right now between Beijing and the U.S. China considers Taiwan a breakaway province. Taiwan argues that it serves as the front line of democracy against Chinese authoritarianism and is increasingly facing military harassment. Nick Schifrin speaks to Taiwan's foreign minister and sets the scene.
In Taiwan, authorities fear drills are becoming reality. Taiwanese pilots scramble American-made fighter jets to practice response. Taiwanese soldiers practice defending their island from would-be Chinese invasion. Taiwan believes Beijing is preparing for war. The Chinese military recently released this video of Chinese drills simulating amphibious assaults. And almost every day, Chinese jets cross Taiwan's self-identified airspace defense identification zone. Never before have so many Chinese planes come so close to Taiwan. Senior Biden administration officials tell PBS NewsHour they do not expect an imminent invasion. But in March, the outgoing top U.S. military commander in the region predicted war was coming.
I think the threat is manifest during this decade, in fact, in the next 6 years.
The Trump administration increased arms sales to Taiwan. The Biden administration continued expanded U.S. naval operations and became the first administration to invite Taiwan's envoy to inauguration.
So, like I said, weapon sales, diplomatic recognition, these things provoke China to no end. I mean, they see it as a matter of just blatant disrespect, to be perfectly honest about it. And now we're in a situation where Taiwan isn't even the only problem. Okay, recently we have seen a spate of cyber attacks. Now, most of these, and I mean from solar winds to the recent Colonial and JBS attacks, have been attributed to Russia. And let me say, I personally find that attribution totally suspect, right? Um, but that's me. It's an opinion, But nevertheless, China's been very, very busy too. Okay, so recently, cybersecurity firm Mandiant had released information pointing to China as being behind a series of hacks against key government targets. Apparently, these guys broke into Pulse Secure, right, which is a program that lets workers remotely connect to their office. And clearly, with the number of people working from home over the past year, this is a serious problem, right? And much like the SolarWinds hack, this was apparently in place for months. For months, they had no idea. I mean, they found this out in April, but they weren't able to even get a patch in place until May to make sure it didn't happen again, right? And don't forget, China also hacked the Microsoft Exchange email program in March, which gave hackers access to organizations around the world, which was another real thorn in the side of our cybersecurity officials. So this Pulse Secure attack caused the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency to activate its strictest emergency powers. Right? They mandated that every civilian government agency to scan and see if they were affected by the hack. And most recently, as a matter of fact, just within the past few days, we found out that towards the end of April, the same Chinese hacking group that breached Pulse Secure used that breach to access New York's Metro Transit Authority, right? They hacked the subway, guys. They hacked the subway. I mean, thank God they didn't apparently do anything to it, right? But they were watching. They were watching. And the crazy thing about the Pulse Secure hack is that it is so similar in setup to the SolarWinds hack. I mean, they went in, they had months long access. They built back doors. They programmed it to erase any evidence of them having been there in the first place. The types of agencies and organizations that they breached were extremely similar. But Russia, 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 right? Russia, Russia, Russia. In any case, um, the cyber ruckus has gotten so severe recently that even NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg is speaking up on the matter. I mean, this guy gave an interview and he said, in line with NATO's policy that a cyber attack might be enough to trigger the alliance's Article 5 Mutual Defense Pact. Stoltenberg said that a major attack basically would be considered just like any other military strike. Okay? He said, in a way, it doesn't matter if it's a kinetic attack or a cyber attack, that we're going to assess as allies whether it meets the threshold for triggering Article 5, which would take us to war, right? Which would take us to war. And basically that it sends a message that we regard cyber attacks as seriously as any other attack. A military response is not off the table, in other words. And we saw this recently. It hasn't been maybe 2 months. I saw an article come out about the UK saying specifically that they would go it alone, that if they had a cyber attack on their critical infrastructure that did enough damage, they would consider launching nuclear weapons on their own. Okay, this has not been that long ago that I saw this article. But yeah, so Stoltenberg said that their response could come via cyber or other means. But let me let you hear what he had to say.
So just a question here, following up on the use of cyber capabilities by China and Russia. This is a question from the audience. China and Russia's use of offensive cyber capabilities continues to disrupt both the public and private sector. What is NATO doing today to deter these cyber attacks, and how can it coordinate its efforts effectively?
So we see more frequent and we see more sophisticated cyber attacks against NATO allies, also the United States. This has led to a significant strengthening our cyber defenses and how we work together on cyber. We have actually decided that a cyber attack can trigger Article 5, can trigger our collective defense clause. We have established cyber as an operational domain alongside air, land, sea. We now also have cyber as an operational military domain. We've established new cyber operation centers, center at our headquarters. And we are sharing best practices. We are conducting big exercises. There's an ongoing exercise now where actually cyber is part of the exercise. So we are doing more and more together to help, to support, to increase awareness. At the end of the day, of course, it's a national responsibility to make sure you have good cyber defenses, but NATO allies are helping each other and supporting each other. And we're also, of course, doing it to protect our own networks.
Just to follow up really quickly on that, you said a cyber attack can now trigger Article 5. Is that a major change from in the past? And when did you decide this? Why has it been put into practice?
We did that some years ago, but of course, it also, in a way, it sends a message that a kinetic attack can, of course, cause a lot of damage, but so can also a cyber attack. So in a way, it doesn't matter whether it's a kinetic attack or a cyber attack. We will assess as allies when it meets the threshold for also triggering Article 5. And that sends a message that, of course, we regard cyber attacks as serious as any other kinds of attacks. Then, of course, we can respond in cyber, but we can also respond with other means. That's up for us to decide. I think also it's important to make sure that allies come together and call out bad behavior also in cyberspace when we see that. And the NATO allies have, we have seen attempts to cyber attacks on the German Bundestag. We had seen SolarWind. We had seen different cyber attacks. We have seen the attack on the OPCW, the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. All out bad behavior when we see it. That's also a way to at least increase the threshold and impose some costs on Russia or other countries when they are responsible for cyber attacks.
Cyber attack on a facility that makes chemical weapons recently. That's wild. I mean, that's wild. I mean, this is serious business, folks. I think this is also why the current administration kind of goes out of its way to point out the difference between attacks on private entities and government agencies. Not that the distinction shouldn't be made, but like, damn, I mean, some of these private entities are in charge of our critical infrastructure. No worries though. I am sure that in July, when Klaus Schwab and co. run their cyber polygon, cyber pandemic simulation, they're going to come up with all manner of horrible ideas for addressing these issues, not the least of which will inevitably be increased government control and surveillance, considering the war footing that these attacks can put us on, right? So no worries, we got that to look forward to. You guys know I like to rant about Klaus, right? But by far, I mean, the most serious escalation that we have seen recently, especially as far as rhetoric, obviously, is in light of the renewed investigation into the origin of the pandemic. Now, I posted a video last week showing quite a bit of evidence as to how we know that the virus came from a lab. So if you haven't seen that yet, please go check it out. But because of the turnaround in just general sentiment, especially from the mainstream on the viability of the theory And because of the revelations from like the Fauci emails, and there's, the growing international outrage and just demand for answers. I mean, we want some answers, right? So in response to all this, China has been particularly horrible, right? This week we saw the editor-in-chief of the Global Times publish an opinion piece calling for possible nuclear war in response to Biden agreeing to reconsider the investigation, and to institute a new investigation into the origins of the pandemic, whether or not this thing came from a lab. These guys are saying the craziest things, you know. Um, I mean, this is the editor in chief of the Global Times calling for possible nuclear war in response to this. I mean, these guys sure aren't hiding anything, right? He said, as and I quote, as the U.S. strategic containment of China has increasingly intensified, I would like to remind again that we have plenty of urgent tasks, but among the most important ones, right, is to rapidly increase the number of commissioned nuclear warheads and the DF-41s, the strategic missiles that are capable to strike long range and have high survivability in the Chinese arsenal. Okay? The guy also said that the number of China's nuclear warheads must reach the quantity that makes U.S. elites shiver should they entertain the idea of engaging in a military confrontation with China. Okay? Now I need you to understand that this guy, right? This guy, he is kind of like the mouthpiece for the CCP. I mean, anything that they publish in the Global Times has been sanctioned by the party. Now normally I would chalk this up to just like massive shit talking. Um, but I mean, the fact that this was even said should be a major concern. I mean, this isn't like, dude on the corner talking smack. This is a whole nation threatening nuclear war over the investigations into a pandemic which affected the world in ways that we have not seen in generations. Okay, I mean, I'm amazed, right? And I mean, we're to the point that, like if you guys caught um, Trump's speech in North Carolina the other day, he had brought up potential reparations, right? Um, and part of what was being suggested was like the collective canceling of Chinese debt. I mean, can you imagine the response if a bunch of countries were just like, nah, I don't think so. We ain't paying you nothing, right? Now, to be fair, I think that is a completely legitimate response, considering the circumstances. And the fact that China is so desperate to hide the information about the pandemic just leads me to think, uh, was this more than a leak? Who knows? I could be totally wrong. This is just an opinion, but it seems to be that once we firmly establish whether or not this came from a lab, right? The next logical question would be, was it an accident? And if not, then what? I think we know what, right? And we know that the US military has been prepping for just such a scenario. I mean, last fall the USAF was simulating a military conflict with China that began with, of all things, right, a biological weapon attack. And it culminated with Chinese military strikes on bases and an amphibious assault on Taiwan. Apparently, in this little mock up, we didn't do so well. So, yeah, so there's that. And that guys, that is not to say that we are screwed, right? We, despite the cartoon military promo vids that we've seen come out recently, right? We have a strong and burgeoning military. And America has many allies. We would not be going this road alone. I mean, on the issue of the virus alone, the entire world has got to be pissed. We can't even begin to estimate the actual amount of damage that's been done in the past year and a half. We're not even done yet. I mean, thank God in most places, here at least, it feels like life has, somewhat kind of started to maybe go back to what would be what we used to call normal. I mean, where I'm at anyway. But China is an issue that is going to have to be dealt with sooner or later. I mean, they are literally slated to overtake the US as the main economic power in the world by 2032. And normally, what we find when one economic power rises up and overtakes another, some kind of conflict ensues. I mean, we have got to break our dependence on China. We got to break our dependence on Chinese products. We got to get them out of our supply chain. And to that effect, as a matter of fact, earlier today, the Senate voted to approve a bill that would boost American semiconductor development and promote American AI dominance, which is at least a step in the right direction, right? Which is at least a step in the right direction. So yeah, so that's what I got for you today. Guys, I want to shout out everybody that has supported me across all the platforms. You guys will get some personal love when I'm doing my live stream on Friday with Tyler. Obviously, this was not done in front of a live studio audience. If you want to support the stream, my Cash App is in the description below. Another great way to support me, if you haven't gone over to Rokfin and made the free account, you need to do that. There are a ton of good content creators over there, and if you're feeling froggy and you want to subscribe through my channel, you get access to all the premium content on the platform. They've got the Android app in the Play Store now, which is awesome. Um, Another great way to support this channel, especially if you drink coffee, or if you have a beard, and that's a lot of people, you can go over to beardvet.com. Use promo code SFN, like Space Force News, SFN at checkout. You get 10% off. You're supporting this channel. You're supporting veterans. They are a veteran-owned and operated company. They donate a portion of every purchase goes to their veteran charity of the month. So that's a win-win right there, guys. And if you haven't followed yet, please do. Please do. Share this video. Like this video and share this video. It's one of the easiest ways you can help me out. You guys know you can find me on YouTube, DLive, Foxhole, Twitch, and of course the Rokfin. Much love, and until next time, stay loyal.